I just need to address the elephant in the room before we get started, which is, as lovely as Liz and I's pictures are up there, we have someone missing. And I don't know if the wrong image was uploaded or why that's happening, but it's a horrible oversight that I wish that I could rectify right now. But I just wanted to say that Calida Jones is integral to this conversation. So, in fact, Liz Shapiro asked that Calida specifically be up here because there's no trouble like Calida trouble, which is always good trouble.
Sometimes. The three of us often sit around and have this conversation. We just don't have it in front of you. So it felt like we should have it in front of you.
Absolutely. Actually, Sean or Allison, can we just take that down because it's just not representative of who's in the room and on the space? So I'm so excited that you all are here. This is, we had our artist feature yesterday. This is our keynote feature for the arts track at the Yale Innovation Summit. We're here to highlight the extraordinary leadership of Liz Shapiro and all of the work that she does for us as artists in the state of Connecticut and the way that she is a visionary and a leader and building institutions that hopefully will serve us for a very long time. I would love for Liz and Calida to just take a moment and introduce themselves so that, those of us who are from out of state or who haven't had the good fortune of getting to know them can just know a little bit more about these two extraordinary women. So maybe, Calida, I could let you start.
Sure. Everybody can hear me, yes? Yeah. Okay, great. Hi, y'all. So I'm Calida Jones. I am originally from the DMV, that's the District, Maryland, and Virginia. Yes, PG County, born and raised, 301 for life. I am a professional violinist by trade. I've been playing since I was 5, and if you ask my dad, he would say he knew that I was going to be an educator because when I was 5, in my kindergarten class, Mrs. Maltemeyer, I went up to the classroom board and I mocked her. Like I was doing everything she was doing and I got in trouble, which is crazy because now people want me to teach and I'm like, now see, and I got in trouble. We need to fix that. Like I need to find her. But I have a background in education, a background in social change. I have the audacity to believe that people it's not privilege that they're missing. It's potential. It's their potential being activated. It's untapped potential. It's not underprivileged. It's not underserved. It's untapped potential. It's access to the resources that are needed to be great. Because if 3 people in this room can be great, then everybody should have the opportunity to be great. I believe. I think that that's reasonable. I think we have more than enough here to do that. I've served on a bunch of boards. I don't find those things as important because it's the work on the ground that really makes the impact for me personally. So that's how I try to live my life. That's a model that was shown to me by my late mother. She was a physical therapist and she was the first Black physical therapist at Georgetown Hospital in Washington, D.C. Let that settle because it's exactly what you think it was. Anyway, now little did I know I would be following in her footsteps in a different career as a musician, as a violinist. It's wild. We can talk offline. I don't do public conversations about that part because it's a journey. Everybody has a journey. And then there's just things that need to be disrupted, destroyed, dismantled, and resisted. And that's the energy I try to carry. I carry it with love, but I'm very serious about every single thing that you're going to hear today. So if it makes you uncomfortable, good. I've been uncomfortable my entire life. I do not get the privilege of being comfortable, of being able to sit in it. I don't get to sit in it. I have to constantly stand. And sometimes it's on one leg. But I do it with grace, and I always bring others along with me, because to do otherwise is uncivilized, and I refuse to move that way. So I hope that many of you will take whatever it is that you're doing. Please do it. If you're thinking about it, stop thinking. Stop overthinking it. I know there's people sitting in this room like, oh, I should have talked to that investor. It's not too late. Go find them. Look their name up in the app. Because the only person holding you back from that next chapter is who? You. It is nobody in this room. It is you. So please do the thing. This is the last day of this conference. How quickly do you want to move forward? That's going to determine whether or not you're going to say hi. I'll take that meeting. I would love to meet you. I'd love to come to your building. So currently I do a lot of work across the country in arts and culture, and I get to hang out with these amazing humans, and we stay curious and we stay encouraged and we keep pushing the bottom line.
It's really hard to figure out what to say about myself. That's going to be interesting after that. And we are in that room a lot. What I would say about me that maybe you don't know and can't read in my bio is that I tend to thrive in chaos. So when things are really crazy, that actually activates different parts of my brain. And so I where we are right now, I don't want to be here, so don't get me wrong, but this is not the worst place where I live, because I think chaos brings the ability for greater change faster. 100% of the time, that's what I've seen. And I'm old enough to feel like I've seen a lot. So that's kind of cool. And then the other thing I would just say about myself is, like, I'm a yenta, so I'm a matchmaker. And that is literally my profession. I thought about doing that when I was a child, and my parents were like, what? And I was really lucky because I had a dad who was like, I want you to be the first woman on the Supreme Court. And then I was like 13 and there was the first woman on the Supreme Court. So I was like, now what? I can be a yenta. And that was not an acceptable substitute. So I'm not a yenta in real life, but that is literally my sweet spot. I like to connect people. And I guess that goes well with being a big picture thinker, because I'm not risk averse. Like, what's the problem? Just call it a pilot and fail. It doesn't matter. You know what? And then call the next one a pilot. Every program that anyone who's ever worked with me knows, it's a pilot, right? So that's all. I think that's what you need to know about me.
And so, Liz, I'm going to ask you to delve into your role a little bit more specifically about being the director of the Connecticut Office of the Arts. Do you want to say your full title? That's fancy.
It's fancy.
Yeah.
So my full title is, I forgot. It's
I know, I forget too.
It's Director of Arts Preservation and Museums in the Department of Economic and Community Development for the state of Connecticut. So it fits on a very small business card, as you know, in very tiny print. That really, what I do is, it's really hard to explain what I do. But let me tell you about what we do in the Office of the Arts, because that's going to be the most pertinent part of this conversation. And for the Office of the Arts, in case you don't know what the Connecticut Office of the Arts is, we are one of 56 state and territorial arts organizations. We were created to be affiliates, feet on the street, with the National Endowment for the Arts. As part of that, we are funded in part by the NEA. And for Connecticut last year, the funding was $1,021,000, right? So what we get from the state for discretionary money is $1.497298 million, just in case you were interested. We have spent all but, I think, 50 cents of that for this year. We are really careful about getting that money out the door, because in a terrible, terrible business plan, our money, we can't save it for a rainy day. We can't use it to plan. We have to spend all of our state money in 12 months and all of our NEA money in 18 months. And we can talk about the good and the bad of that. And if anyone can tell me the real good about that, I would be really interested. So our job is to work within the DECD and its parameters, right? So economic and community development, and work within the goals of the NEA, which are ever-changing, right? And sometimes the goals of the state are ever-changing too, and our money it changes over every year. So to try to, what we say is foster a culture of creativity across Connecticut. We want to make sure that our dollars are spent really wisely and that they can touch every single person in the state of Connecticut. And we work within state and federal law. So all the money that we get from the state, $1,021,000 of it, that's the right number. I need to write it out to say it. Is of the state money is our federal match, and that money must be spent in the same parameters, within the same parameters as our federal money. So we work in this very fluid and yet well-defined situation of rules and regulations to do this. And we sign contracts to do this. But the money that comes from the feds is half of our discretionary budget. We also get a lot of other money out the door. So we have over $6.7 million of line item funding in Connecticut for arts and cultural organizations is a little weird. The majority of it is directed by our legislators to their legislative priorities. And through our last, I think that we're pre-pandemic. We're not post-pandemic. We're pre the next pandemic. But it's life, people. You got to think this way. And it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity, right? But basically, we got out about how much money? And now I'm forgetting. But over $100 million, more than $100 million over the last few years. Over 853 grants including ARPA money, including to social services, because we had the mechanisms within DECD to get grant money out. So we took on a really big, heavy load, and it was really hard. So, but we did it, and really proud of it.
It's incredible. It strikes me as well that, like, when you're talking about even those numbers that sound very, very big, when spread across all of the incredible institutions that we have in the state of Connecticut, like, that goes really fast, right? Did you want to say anything about, like, we think about, like, the federal subsidies of the NEA and, like, the current state of where things are, or how COA fits in the umbrella of DECD? Did you want to touch kind of on
I can briefly say that. So I'm really happy to say, so economic and community development, I go to all these senior staff meetings, and I have a few people who are also at senior staff meetings in this room, and I'm like, there's no difference between economic and community development, false dichotomy. I love the phrase false dichotomy. I think I first heard it in college, and every so often it comes up to me. Like, you can't, if people are not having a good economic life, then your community life and development is not going to happen. So we have been talking through this whole symposium about the intersection of all the things. And so being placed in DECD as a division within DECD and partnering with the State Historic Preservation Office, which also falls under my purview, and it does things like historic preservation tax credits and incentives in that way, and also grants. We are really well placed, and running 4 museums, right? We are really well placed within DECD to think about how these cultural organizations and this whole sector works, because I'm next to my colleague who runs the film office under his domain. I am 2 doors down from our tourism director. I am 3 doors down from our small business director, and we are all at the agency really beginning to work in a new way. And, it's slow. Institutional change is slow. But really beginning to work in a way where we're thinking, how do we do this together? Right? And my colleagues are in on this, doing it together. So we are considered to be an economic development arm, the arts are, of DECD, if you want to have the false dichotomy.
I find that unbelievably powerful. The arts are an economic arm of the Department of Economic and Community Development in the state of Connecticut.
So here, tip for all of you. Just go to the even if you're not invited to the meetings, just go to the meetings, because people hate going to meetings. And if you continue to show up at the meetings, you're going to find that you're in the right meeting with all the, eventually.
Can you tell us about crashing those meetings? You've told me stories about how you just show up in the meetings.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's like the housing meetings, and it's the, like, you go to those.
Oh, yeah. So, yes, of course you do. Because if you're seeing the intersections, but other people aren't seeing the intersections, it's not their fault that they didn't invite you. They just don't know. And so I'm very happy. Well, that's it. That is it. And we've been talking about this a lot. People who work like trying to fix some of these, what the state might consider the big problems, right? And they are big problems. Healthcare, affordable housing. And I would say we build a lot of apartments, but we don't sell a lot of properties. And that is a whole other question. But supportive housing, all of these things, like, the arts play a role in all of these things. And we can talk about how that messaging comes across later and needs to change. And I've been working with my partner, Jason Mancini from Connecticut Humanities, who's right there. And right behind him, my partner, Rufus Durham from the Connecticut Arts Alliance. This is a concerted effort. And as we found out today, we need all the people at the table, not just the arts people at the table.
Correct. Agreed. So I want to turn to the idea of economic development. You've both spoken about how the idea of like asking for money is not policy, right? So if we're advocating for arts funding, what should we actually be building towards? And what does a real arts policy look like at the state level for both of you?
Yeah, so we should be actually building towards making sure that these artists that we say we care about have somewhere to sleep and eat. We love the artists. We love to talk about the art and how beautiful and how powerful, how transformative it is. But I don't have anywhere to sleep when I'm done performing. Like, that to me should be at the top of the list when we're talking about the arts policies. It's great to give me money or to give artists and creatives funding to do their art, but it's very short-sighted to not give them a place to stay, to not give them a place to actually create and build their art. And I was having this conversation with one of our colleagues, Albert Lee, about this very thing, like the housing, the food, the health benefits, being able to afford said built apartments that are unaffordable for people that even make six figures. Like, that is not a real life. And so I think we've got to start, really pulling back these layers. And it's a really big problem because we're saying that art is valid. We're saying that everybody deserves to create art. Everybody deserves to have a spot to create their art and do their art. But then we don't give them a place to rest and take a breath and focus on some wellness and some health and exercise and cooking your own food and just the things that we have here. But many of these artists that are fighting for a chance, a spot, don't have anywhere to go when they're done creating. So I really think that needs to be part of the policy conversation. And if these legislators that say, hey, I love the arts, I want to advocate for them, if you love it so much, make sure that there's an artist residency hub where someone can live in your town, because that individual is going to put money into your town because they're paying rent, they're going to your grocery stores, they're getting gas, all of those things. It's a circle, and it should be reciprocal. We should not have to beg for somewhere to live, beg for somewhere to eat, ask for a stipend. I mean, when does it become enough of being inhumane?
Yeah, and I would add that this is true for artists, but it's true for a lot of different kinds of people. So 100%, this is not just an arts problem, and I think that is maybe the critical part of this, right? We've sort of... Should I talk about the nonprofit, for-profit?
I'm about to unleash you in just a minute. If you
sure,
could just talk about policy. No, just hold on.
So we've sort of created a monster, I think, because of how the nonprofit system works, and it's sort of up against the for-profit system, right? So if you're a nonprofit, really your job is to come from a culture of deficit thinking and to be asking for money, because what you do, you were created because nobody thought that you were going to succeed in a business model. Anyway, in theory, going back, right? And you're also created, and this is the colonial system, right? This came out of England. You know, when in the middle of the Industrial Revolution, when the middle class started to rise and started to have an opinion, the rich people created nonprofits, and they created these boards so they could be in charge of the direction that all of these do-gooder middle class people, and then, God forbid, the actual poor people wanted to go, right? So it's a system that in my mind is fundamentally broken. And what I can tell you is, for years, I've been like, I've run nonprofits for 30 years. Why is it that just when I think I have the perfect board, something happens, somebody leaves, I get a new board chair, and everything sucks? Like, why does that happen every time? Because I'm pretty good. Like, I'm kind. I approach this trying to understand what people are thinking, but also the idea that a bunch of people hire an expert to do a job and then become the experts themselves amazingly and don't let the expert do their job feels weird. It just feels weird. And anybody who says like, I struggle in my nonprofit. So 30 years I have been working within the different organizations in the state of Connecticut trying to make this right. And 30 years feels like a long time to be making a problem, to try to solve a problem that never gets fixed. And so I think, the last sort of wave that we were on is let's diversify our boards, right? Let's have them reflect the community they serve, and let's make sure, and yes, 100%. But when you look at that, those communities we serve, those people are working all the time. Those people are like, I need people in their 30s on my board. I don't have anybody. And I'm like, yeah, well, they're 24/7 taking care of kids or older parents. They have other things to do at this time in their life. So I'm going to say it now. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I'm just going to say it. I think we need to actually look at what the legal the legal requirements of having a nonprofit board are, and maybe just do that.
Yes. Yeah. You only need 3 people.
You only need 3 people, folks, and they can't be related. So, sorry, I know that's a bummer for some of us, but because let's not spend time managing a board. We may, if we're lucky, have employees to manage. We may have an organizational culture to build. If you're spending a quarter of your time trying to manage a board on top of that, like that's a big waste. It's such a waste. So I've gone a 180 on this through my career, and I'm wondering where I'm going to land when my career is done. So, but that's my moment in the sun right now.
I'm just recognizing that, like, the first conversation that Calida and I had was, Calida was like, I don't do nonprofits anymore. I don't do boards. And I want you to talk about that journey as well. Is yours here?
I think it's on. Oh, here we go. It's good. No, because Liz, I love you. The system actually isn't broken. The nonprofit, it's working exactly the way it's supposed to. It's supposed to be a savior model, right?
We've talked about that in multiple sessions.
It's working beautifully for the people that it works for, right? That top down, the wealthiest person gets to make all the decisions. You can diversify your board. You can have all the black and brown and people of color on the board that you want. But if nobody of that community is making any decisions, then you're not actually doing anything. You just have new bodies. Now, the moment you move the decision making and the process making, then things become a little uncomfortable, because then all of a sudden you're questioning, well, how much do they know? Are they actually qualified to make decisions? So that's the difference. You have to release that need to control the situation and how it's dictated. And the nonprofit complex, the complex itself is broken, but there are ways that we can move through it if we can divorce the supremacy characteristics that live within it. But we have to be willing to really divorce it and step away from it and divorce our own egos.
What has been your so you do a lot of consultancy with nonprofits, right? And you are trying to get them to kind of reimagine the way that they engage with things like hiring practices and boards. And what has been some of the push-pull in trying to work with nonprofits, especially in this time? First of all, what are you hearing that the barriers that they are facing are?
Gatekeeping is a hot one. That one stays hot on the docket. To your point, Liz, the board doesn't reflect the community that's being served. So I feel like, what would it look like if there was a shared governance model that included the artists and the artist leaders and the culture bearers, the culture protectors, the community members and partners, that everyone is part of the decision-making process, right? So that there's been a lot of crunchiness around, when I start to raise the flag around, this is giving that wealthy donor energy, and you don't actually know what you're talking about because you're the CEO of Verizon. This is a theater. What are you talking about? And that part always frightens me. Okay, I'm sorry. But it scares me because well-meaning people, right, freely give their time of controlling real people's lives and their money. And when you really think about that, it is like a heart attack on steroids. I'm like, oh my God, people who really care about the art form also get to decide whether or not I'm going to have a job next week because it's an at-will state. and maybe I made a decision that didn't align with what they thought I should have done, and so they moved to get me out of there. So it's how do you structure a governance model that actually censors the community that you're serving and include the community as part of the conversation? And we're getting at pieces of that with a lot of organizations, but there are still places that are very uncomfortable with releasing power. It's a power thing. It's power and money. And there's this perception that if I hold on to the power, then I get to dictate and control what you do, because that's how this country was built.
So Liz, what is the version of that you see? Like when you're working with nonprofits and they're coming to you with their hands out and they're being like, we just can't raise our budget, we're going to have to cut back programming. Like, what are the nonprofits saying that is the barriers to keeping them from actualizing right now?
Well, I think, we're sort of a prisoner of what we created in so many ways. I'm glad that, thank you, because I think you're so smart, Jeff.
The shout out on stage. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
I love it.
Yeah. Because we sort of create, we're taught as the directors of nonprofits that the biggest thing that we need to do is to actually raise money, and part of it is by asking for it, because by the way, rich people can give us money, right? And we don't have to pay taxes on it, and they don't have to pay it's all good. This is how the system works. And I think it's not right, but it doesn't work. I mean, when a nonprofit, when the second person they hire is a director of development, for God's sakes, that does not make any sense. I have always said, I used to say hire a director, and then about 20 years ago, I stopped saying that, and I said, just hire a volunteer coordinator first. Get somebody who can really get people psyched about your organization first, and then you'll sort of get a sense of like, who's a leader, who might not be, like, just get an idea that, and then move to some kind of a structure that where you have other staff. But if the second hire and the most highly paid person is the person who has to ask for money, that just doesn't make sense. So I like that vision that you propose. I just think people are going to be people. And I'm sorry. And I love all of you. I love people. That is like my meat and potatoes. But I think you're just going to continue to be human, which is very imperfect. And that's all of us. It's me, it's you, it's all the time, right? And we just try to be better. All of us in this room want it to be right and to work for everybody. And how long before we say, yeah, people are just going to be people. So how do we bring this sector together as a creative sector, which is, I think, where we're going with this conference, right? Like, where the nonprofits can be talking to the for-profits, and the artists and creatives can be thinking, I may be ready to say that I'm an entrepreneur. I still don't understand. It might be bad because it might be tied to money, but we do live in a capitalist society.
Well, I want to actually push on that a little bit, because, and I'm actually fascinated because I have no idea how y'all will answer this. But the opposite of the for-profit is, or the nonprofit is the for-profit, right? And like, we have to also recognize that like for-profits have boards. And for-profits have like some of the same structures that you're talking about, but there is this urge, I feel, from both of you, and we've talked about it in private, to kind of flirt with that for-profit sector, and just say like, okay, what's over there? Because this isn't working. So can you talk about that urge to like just like look at the possibility over there and what feels appealing about it?
Well, I'm just not a fan of having 30 people tell me what to do.
Or one person.
Yeah. It's very hard because you want to have really good conversations about art, about the vision, about missions sometimes, but you've got the board piece, you've got the budget piece. Like, why can't we have unrestricted funding? Like, why is that still a conversation? Why can I only use 5% of funding for operating resources? Like, you literally need humans to do the work, but you can only use 5% of that grant you received. That is a very unattractive model. It's broken. And the for-profit, there's room to, I can do what I want, like I I can help people the way I want to help them, and I don't have to beg someone. I don't have to show you why it's important for me to support the community that I came from.
And retrofit your vision into that, whatever that, like, that container of what the funding is supposed to go towards, right? Like, a lot of times when you're raising capital in the for-profit sector, you're raising towards a vision, right? And that vision ends up being sort of at your discretion to implement once you've found those capital partners.
Right.
But it's not about, like, limiting the operational dollars to only go to X, right? Like, that's you changing your vision to fit the funding opportunity, right? So that's one, right? Like, the opportunity to raise capital in a more flexible way.
So I would also say that nonprofits, and how many nonprofits are in, how many people who are affiliated in a nonprofit in this room? Okay, that's it. That's good. So what I would say is we, as nonprofits, you may be passionately committed to the mission. However, I think that I have always experienced this. So I won't ask for a show of hands, but I think that you don't believe that the value that you bring is actually the value that you bring. So there's this, once you're dependent on somebody giving you money, you're essentially dependent on someone else recognizing your value. Like your success is determined by someone else recognizing your value, which feels weird to me as well. There's a lot of things that feel weird. They don't feel very human to me. So this going back to the policy question, and this, some of us were in a discussion just before this, and this has to do with like, where do arts and cultural, where do we stand? What is the value proposition? Because many of us are not fluent enough on our value proposition. So I would say thinking about manufacturing, which ... the state invests in. Thinking about small businesses, which ... the state invests in. Thinking about healthcare or health sciences or biotech or AI, which ... the state invests in. It is very clear to those people who are making the decisions at a state level what the value is. And if we go to folks at all levels of power in Connecticut, what you will find is they have a very narrow vision of what the arts and culture sector bring to the table. And a lot will say, well, tourism, and for good or bad, we, arts and culture, are in the tourism caucus at the state level. So we primarily are talking and working with partners in tourism. They are amazing partners, by the way. And we are now beginning to cultivate relationships with people in housing, right? But we have to do it. So I have to do it through my peers in state government, who will then talk to the people who are actually doing the advocating at a state level, because I work for the governor. I don't advocate, right? I just do the thing, and have ideas about how to do the thing. And that's what they pay me to have ideas about doing the thing. So, but also so many other sectors, right? We are going to run out of creatives to advance AI and quantum computing if we're not teaching creativity in schools. That's just a thing. And I have my art, she's drinking coffee, my arts educator is here in the room, and she knows that what I have said is, as soon as we get more money, we double or triple down on arts education, because the state has its own issues in regard to arts education. And maybe that looks like arts and technology. Maybe it looks like other things. But manufacturing, which is a creative industry to a certain extent, because somebody's got to think of the things to manufacture and create the tools to manufacture them. But if we don't have creative thinkers here, like, we're not going to be able to do that. We're going to have to import talent. So we need to be working together to actually have this voice that says, you guys, without this we bring all of this. So what would manufacturing look like without arts education?
Right.
And that is it.
Well, it's interesting. You and I go back and forth about the state's branding of manufacturing, because what do they call manufacturers?
Oh, what is it? A creative?
Yeah, they call them
creatives.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to say anything because we're recording. No, and some, it's a difference. We're going to get there, right? I said things are working like within the agency much more smoothly. There's many more open conversations. But like when you're used to working as a sector within your sector, like it takes a while to form the trust, form the relationships to actually break down these silos which are within government. Okay, truth. I came to state government and the first thing I found out was that theaters in Connecticut were not talking to other theaters. And I was shocked because literally my whole career has been spent calling my neighbors who do the same thing as me to talk to them about how they do it. But they had never had a conversation in recent years. And I was stunned to silence. Which is not a usual thing.
It is just fascinating. I was also just meditating on like, so my position is under Yale Ventures, right? And like when Yale Ventures feels like it's doing its work, it feels like it's creating value and also supporting the values of that industry, right? They believe that healthcare is a good thing, so they want to create as much value as possible. And what you're pointing to is that we actually don't replicate that in the arts.
We don't.
No, we don't.
Like, not at all.
Yeah.
I think I was at one of the sessions yesterday. All I thought to myself is, what would happen if I said what I'm about to say? This is why when we talk, we're just having our conversation in front of all of you guys. So what would it be like if y'all felt like you were better than everyone else working in every sector in the state of Connecticut? Better, and not that I'm not saying do that. That is not kind. That is not the way I want to approach life. But
Do it. No.
What if you actually thought that and believed it? Like, you manufacturers, you only do one thing. Us arts people, we have quality of life. We increase health outcomes. We do it more cheaply than, by Medicaid and insurance and what if you felt that for a second and really believed it? Then you would go into every conversation looking at people thinking, okay, I'm actually the person in the room who is thinking the most creatively about this. I have the most ways to solve this problem, which is a very big difference than how you go into a room when you're like, please, sir, can I have some more? Like, that is not a strategy.
My theater will fold if you don't give me $30,000.
Which is really not what anyone wants to hear. And right? You don't want to hear a pitch for money when you say you're going to close in 6 months without the money. That is not going to get you money.
That is so funny. It's so true. So I want to turn us to let's get a little spicy.
We're off script. Spicy now? Okay.
Well, I was gonna maybe go down to some of the tactics that we've tried in the past. So I wanted to think about like this values-based work that we've tried to build our institutions on. So Calida, you have opinions about DEI and about how
I do. Is that what the streets are saying?
And about how it's either served us, how it's pointed us in like the right direction, but with the wrong engine, how it served certain people that it wasn't supposed to serve. Do you want to speak to that a little bit? Because we've tried a lot of things to like innovate over the last couple of years, but I'm not sure that they've actually innovated us in a direction that I like, if that makes sense.
It does. I know this is being recorded, but so I have had to use the letters DEI, but they are not actually my favorite letters to use at all because it's never benefited me, ever. It has, and I say this with love, but it has benefited white women because it has all been focused on gender. So again, that pushes us further into the background. And so I have seen, in my opinion, a lot of preservation of legacy instead of activating opportunities. And I feel like that's the lens that a lot of our nonprofits are functioning through. It's like, oh, we've got to preserve our legacy of 725 years of being here. You never had a person of color lead. That's not a flex. That's a disappointment. Because you're doing it off the backs of the people of color who built the foundation for you to stand on and make it happen. So, in fact, DEI did not really serve. And I had to do it because that's part of my work. Inclusion is part of the work. Access is part of the work. Culture building is part of the work. And it's a responsibility that every single human should carry. Just because you see me doesn't mean I'm responsible for carrying the culture of your organization. You are responsible for ensuring that the culture is humane, is dignified, that you're treating every single person with care, with kindness. That's part of the equity. That's part of the diversity. That's part of the inclusion, the access, the belonging. Like there's all these words, unfortunately, that have been weaponized. And so now you have to do a different dance. You have to play like really strategic chess and not Connect Four, not checkers, when you're having conversations about the DEI work. And when we were talking about this on the phone, like I was taking some notes, because a lot of it at this point is surface level gains. Because if you think back to 2020 and to 2025 today, okay. The silence was on purpose because I need you to think back to 2020. I need you to think back to those friends that you were hugging and holding and comforting, because that's what I spent my energy doing instead of taking care of myself to make sure that I was okay so that I could show up for the rest of the world. And now we're in 2025 where everything is just being walked back, and not quietly, like in your face. It's like, well, okay. I mean, I'm glad I know who I can look to for support, and I'm glad I know where I need to move and reposition myself and excuse myself from the table, because I don't need your table. I can build a table, and I can invite other people to come and add their legs to it.
Right.
And at this point, I'm disinterested in keeping that DEI bubble alive, and I'm more interested in building tables and having people bring their legs and add their legs to the table. It can be you, it can be you, it can be anyone, instead of trying to fight for what's always been within this social construct. So the DEI thing, like when all of that was happening and people were just really, they were crashing out. They were like, oh my God, this is terrible. And I was like, well, you could actually just treat people like humans with kindness. Like, I don't know. It feels
You
like
have to stop. Like you can.
you don't have to stop. Like
The values don't go away. The branding did, but the values don't leave.
The branding goes away, but like you can still be kind. You can still allow for people to reset and take care of their mental health, and there still needs to be accountability that sits in that. That's not lost on me either. COVID did a number on us with accountability and making decisions, and I'd just be looking like, ooh, okay. If you like it, I love it. Like, go ahead. But, we really have to look at what accountability looks like. But like, as far as like how we can shift the DEI situation, I was taking notes, and I was talking to myself. I talk to myself. Yes, I do. I have a board in my head of advisors. But I was thinking about the underlying power structures, like the networks, the budgets, the decision-making organs of organizations. They haven't shifted in this perceived DEI ideas, all of the acronyms that are out here. None of the fundamentals have shifted. So that's why we're seeing these very minute changes. And then people get really excited about those changes. I'm like, y'all didn't do nothing. Like, let me decide on your $5 million budget and how that money's earmarked. And the pushback that I would get and that I have received when I have asked, well, I'd love to help make decisions and create vision. They're like, well, we think we've got this under control. Control. Listen to people's language. Listen to the words that they say to you, because then you'll really find out exactly who they are. Listen very closely, because I tag certain words and I remember, okay, this person is really not about that life of belonging. They're not really about that life of ensuring that the accessibility looks like what it needs to for every single person, which is different for all kinds of people. And we're not ready to have that conversation about how do you set up resources for people who read differently or see differently or process information differently. That's the equity of it all. And it's really silly that we have these lists of words now that you can't say or use, but I'm going to keep doing that work and I'm going to keep saying those words because I can't not do that. We've got millions and millions and millions of children looking to us for what happens now.
And I wonder, Liz, if it resonates with you, like as Calida's talking about building her new table, if like you feel that your position at the state affords you the power to like help with that building and what that looks like.
I keep thinking about the word agency, right? And also, I'm thinking about a couple of words right now. So I don't know if this is going to come out. So I keep thinking about the word diversity, right? And I'm going back to yesterday morning's panel, where Hope Chavez, who's not here today, talked about vulnerability versus fragility, which is, it like did a thing in my head. Like it really made me begin to think, because diversity is actually really hard because it actually means that you're not living in an echo chamber, right? We always say, look at who's on your Facebook feed. Yeah. Very few people who have a differing opinion than I am is on my Facebook feed. I don't go to my Facebook feed, but when I go, I don't go to hear from people who I do not agree with. And then you think, okay. And then I put on NPR, the liberal media, right? So that is, so I'm constantly thinking, am I in an echo chamber? What am I doing to create an echo chamber? How can I listen to these ideas that I am instinctively hate and actually open my mind to them? Because there's a there. Now, I work for government. I see how sometimes there's needs for change in how government works, right? And so this is one of the things that I have been thinking about quite a lot lately is how does living in an echo chamber, the concept of diversity, the concept of vulnerability and fragility, which if you're fragile, you need to work on you. Right? That's
go
a
to
thing.
therapy.
Go to therapy for that.
Work that out.
None of us up here can help that.
I will not be helping. That's
we can listen and we can give you
No more coffee meetings.
not those.
And then the conversation we also had on agency, which I feel like has a plate. Like I feel like there's a line there. I'm not sure exactly how to connect it, but like we were talking about the fact that we cannot forget that everyone has agency in their life, right? It's your life. You have agency over those decisions. Agreed. Circumstances, agreed. The world, agreed. 100%. But ultimately, the circumstances that are around you create decisions that you can make for yourself. And if you don't feel you're in the right space or sector, then use the tools around you. If you're sitting in this room, you have tools around you, right? So use the tools around you to try, like, I hate this, be the change you want to see, like, try whatever. But actually, there's a few things that I think are really important, like do unto others. That's actually about compassion. That's about show compassion to me, and I will show compassion and patience back to you. That's a thing. Be the change you want to be. Sitting back and being like, I just can't. There's times in your life that you need to step away. But I just can't, and I want all the other people to do the work for me, is also not a winning strategy. Like, I don't think we're going to get there with that strategy. So that's kind of where the space that I'm living in. It's not clearly defined, but
I feel like, and I mean, I think you would agree, you also have to speak life into other people. That helps you to see your purpose with more clarity. And I do that all the time. And I didn't even realize I was doing it until someone pulled me aside and said that to me. She said, and she's here. I don't know where she is. And to be honest, I can't recall your name. And I remember names, so I apologize in advance. But you know who you are when I say this. She came up to me and she said, thank you for what you said last year in the keynote. I don't even remember. Now I got to go back and watch it, but whatever I said to her, she changed something in her life, and it was very impactful. And she said, you spoke life into me. You spoke to the inner core of who I am, and I could not recognize or realize that's what I should have been doing. Like that, I should have left that job. I'm always telling people to leave. I'm always going to tell you to leave. So don't talk to me because I'm going to say leave the job, be your own person. You do not have to be controlled by people. That piece about agency, Liz, and I love that you said that. And it wasn't until within the last 3 years that I actually felt that I had agency over my life. Because there were people dictating and moving me around. And so when you say that statement of agency, seek your personal board of advisors and find out what does your agency need to look like so that you can be successful, so that you can grow your networks, and so that you can speak life into other people. I cannot stress that enough. That is a lot of how I've gotten into a lot of spaces that ordinarily I wouldn't be in, was just speaking life into other people, listening to other people, and speaking life into their vision, into their goals, into their hopes and dreams. A lot of people are scared to do the jump, and I definitely jumped. And I don't know if this is ever going to land, but I did jump. And so that's speaking into people's lives.
But hopefully we don't land. I mean, it's like growing up, right? Yeah.
Wait, now.
We don't land. You don't have to land. I mean, jump.
Okay.
Stay up there,
Thank you for
know?
clarifying, because I was like, I need to land. I need a nap. I need a nap.
Sleep, but don't land. I think that's again about that accountability piece, right? So who are you ultimately accountable for? Well, if you're in a job, right, you are accountable. You have agreed. You have made a social pact, right? There's an agreement. You're going to do the things that are a part of your job. And if that is not working for you, then that might not be the job for you. And that's totally okay. Ultimately, the only person who it's going to really work to be accountable for is you, because you have to go to bed with yourself every night. It's the only person you have to go to bed with every night. So
there's something about
I thought it was funny.
I thought it was funny too. I am under-caffeinated at this point in the conference. It took me like half a second to let that land, but that was funny. I like that. I was thinking about James's talk yesterday, and he said something about like a mutual economy is a bunch of empowered people with agency who are all working together, and that just really stuck with me because it's the agency part, right?
Literally, I was trying to look at him when I said the agency thing.
Yeah, but that's what you're pointing to. Because I think that we've all dreamed of a mutual economy. Like that was the conversation, or I guess the most generous version of the conversation with all of the DEI initiatives of the last 5 years. But we actually forgot about like the agency part, right? Like we still tried the top-down approach. We still tried we're not going to like, try different things and like disrupt the structures. It was all still in the ossified, containers that just haven't been actually that empowering, right? And I think it's really interesting, right? Because I think that the point of having the arts track at an innovation summit, Liz at an innovation summit, is because the reality is that like we need to experiment with what agency looks like, because I'm not sure that we've kept track of that thread. I'm just noticing I can't believe we like ran this hour out, and I totally didn't look. I was gonna like have questions.
I know we don't have time. We can't.
You can have. Who has one great quick question?
Girl.
All right. Well, I don't want to be Debbie Downer, and I love everything
You can be
you're
Debbie Downer,
talking
but
about.
be quick.
And I'm not Debbie anyway, but I love your optimism. We are in a moment of extreme panic because of Donald Trump. I'm sorry, but I feel like this conversation is 2 years old. Yeah. This is not funny. Your half of your funding is cut from the NEA, or will be. I am a museum director. I'm part of 1,200 art museum directors. There is panic going on. We're not talking, of course, DEI being taken off of every website. Yale's money is being attacked. Harvard's money is being attacked. I feel terrified. And I love your approaches, and I built the Museum of Arts and Design in New York with the Economic Development Corp. I'm an entrepreneur. But what are we going to do now, ladies? I'm really scared. This is, people cannot express themselves. People are being told they cannot express themselves. We're in the arts. I'd like to know about that. That's what I came here for. Sorry.
Yeah, no. So we're 100% living in a moment, right?
Not a moment.
Well, everything is a moment. So that is a perspective, right? So, but what I'm going to say is I was so lucky about 2 weeks ago to be overnight and in a space with Hasim Kwame Jeffries. And I don't know if any of you are historians or like history. He's my I love him, and I've loved him for a really long time. He also happens to be the brother of Hakeem Jeffries, who knows a few things, right, and has some inside scoop. And so I come kind of from a history background, and he and I had a conversation for like 2 hours over a very lengthy dinner. And we were both optimistic at the end of the conversation, because we're looking at how history, and U.S. history, has dealt with these impossible times, and we have had impossible times. Well, you say not like this. We did have a civil war. We did have, so not like maybe we have, any of us here have lived through, but I I'm not a historian. I'm not even going to say as a historian, but as a person who reads history and was a history person for years, I take comfort from the fact that our country has let us change the dynamics. And on the way here, I was listening to NPR from Austria talk about how everybody's in love with Viktor Orban. So 100%, I stayed with it, even though I hated hearing it, because there are so many people in Austria right now who are leaving the country because this is an untenable situation for them. So, and they don't have necessarily a history of turnaround from autocracy, right? They really don't. They have a history of autocracy there. So I think, that's where I go. You tell us where you go.
Well, I just wanted to hold you in your panic, because I think that if you're arriving there, then, I'm from North Carolina. I'm from Appalachia, in a very red part of the world. And the reality is that it's been a lot longer time of panic that I've been experiencing. So it's not, for me, my panic started when I moved to New York in 2015, and I realized artists couldn't make money, and I didn't come from family support. And I realized that there weren't institutions that were going to really support my work, and I wasn't going to be able to make a living out of doing this, even though I was educated and even though on paper I was succeeding. And so for me, that was that moment of panic. And that panic hasn't gone away. And I think if you're feeling any sort of joy or mirth, or that we're not addressing the elephant in the room, I think what we are seeing as, three women who have lived in panic for a long time at this point, is that we're seeing this as maybe an opportunity to shake things up in a way that could potentially be productive. And I think we are all seeing ourselves as women with agency to make some of that change happen.
So my panic started December 9th, 1981. The day that I came to... No, but seriously, my panic started then, and it has never let up. My panic has always been there, and I didn't know what it was until I became an adult. I left my parents' home at 17. I went to a school where I was the only black person in the music program, and I had to fight and claw my way through every day, all day. So the panic has never gone away, but what I will not allow it to do is steal my joy, to steal my I have privilege because I'm here, and I cannot afford to panic right now because my ancestors did more than what I've done with less. And so for everyone here, I know that there's a lot of people in this space right now that are likely crashing out mentally because you're like, oh my God, I don't have my autonomy. You fight for your autonomy. I'm not leaving the soil that I was born on. I'm going to fight for it. I'm going to fight for the people who are here with me. So I just want to encourage you to move through that panic and move and do something. Move through that fear and do something, because I have never had the option to just sit back and be scared.
Dr. Jeffries said there has never been a time in human history that people did not have to fight every day. It's just that some people have been privileged to not have to acknowledge that. And I'm not suggesting that. I do think that living in these times is going to be, it's going to be hard. There's no question.
Or you're going to cut your agency in half.
No.
So
Work together.
I actually had, so good news is that the NEA, we have been told to make it public. It is public. New York has made it public. My siblings in New York have made it public that our NEA funding for this year is coming through. NEA, NEH, IMLS, they're all on the chopping block for next year. And they were on the chopping block the last time in this administration. These agencies happen to usually have bipartisan support. Yes, they can be on the chopping block again, but I actually had an entire plan of how to move forward without it because I didn't think we were going to have it. And in some ways, I was excited about it because I thought it would get us maybe to where I wanted or thought or have been told and all of those things where we could go faster. Because there'd be a hot second to think, because we couldn't just be giving out money. We had to think. And in some ways, when I think about it, I'm like, and my staff who are here know this, how do we have the time to think about it and be doing it in the midst of this? And luckily, we all work really hard and we're all really committed.